What did we learn from the win versus Louisiana? What are the biggest questions heading into Michigan week? And finally, who are the three players that need to step up for the Gophers to have any sort of chance?
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You are listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day of the week. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And we are here for our Monday recap of what went down with the Gophers football team this weekend. If you want to know the takeaways, if you want to know the questions and more, be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of this daily content. And also follow us wherever you get your podcasts at Locked On Golden Gophers. Now, as always, if you have any questions for this week, for the future, moving forward, drop them in the comments over on YouTube or send us a DM on Twitter at Gophers Kane Rob, because I want to get those on the weekly mailbags. We've got some good questions for this week's weekly mailbag, which will drop on Wednesday. But regardless, I want to talk about the takeaways from this Week 5 win against Louisiana. That's how we're going to kick off the show, because the first thing that stood out to me is that Athan Calakman has showed well. Now, you might have some fans out there like, oh, it was only like 146 yards. Like, that's not even that great. Or, oh, he had that bad interception. Look, folks, he's not going to be perfect. He is still a younger quarterback in his first real year of being the guy, and he's having been in tough situations. Now, some of it he has responded, and others he's still growing, so give him time. But we saw the flashes. In fact, we saw the fourth highest completion percentage in school history with 10 attempts or more. And you know what? It looked really good in this game. 14 attempts, 12 for 14, 85% completion, 146 yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. Also had a touchdown on the ground, I believe. So he was doing it all for the Gophers this weekend, with Zack Evans doing it all, with Daniel Jackson doing it all. The offense was clicking for the most part. There wasn't too much slow areas for the offense, which you love to see. You love to see them starting to kind of build that up. But the defense had a couple question marks. We'll get to that in just a minute, but continuing on with Athan Calakman, the decision-making is still improving. It's still growing. Now, yes, the interception play was bad and it was forced, but all 13 other throws, so 14 throws, all 13 other throws were very good. And he was connecting on touchdown strikes. He was placing the ball in good spots. It wasn't all hard passes, fast passes, bullet passes. So you're seeing him get comfortable and get into his element and continuing to develop. Much love to the quarterback. Look, the biggest plays to really ice this game out came back to back with Athan Calakman. The first one was on a 3rd and 9, driving the field, 3rd and 9, and it looked like a certain sack. The pocket was collapsing. The defender basically had Athan in his clutches, on top of the fact that he was already pulling him down. Athan finds a way to get the ball out, finds Corey Crooms on a one-on-one slant, and he catches the ball, gives all the credit to his receiver, but Athan, no. You get some of the credit on that one. It was a very impressive pass. Then it's 4th and 2, and they go for it, and they punch it in for a touchdown. So instead of being 4th and 15, he fights through that sack, gets it to his receiver who makes the play. Then they go on to a great touchdown, 37-yard strike on a rope to Daniel Jackson on an RPO. Look, it was a beautiful moment. And on top of that, I loved that Athan said in the presser after that he was signaling for his coaches, like, we should go for this, because he could tell. He could tell that this team needed it, that the offense needed it. They needed to bounce back. They needed the confidence. They needed to capitalize, and they did. So much love to the young quarterback. Now, you've seen that chemistry develop with Daniel Jackson and Athan Calakman. You've seen the chemistry develop between Corey Crooms and Athan Calakman. The next step is developing that chemistry with Tristyn Spann-Ford and Elijah Spencer, because those two weapons are two weapons with very different skill sets than what Jackson and Crooms have. So if we can have different approaches, versatility across the offense, and have those connections be strong across the board, that is what is going to help set this offense up for success in the future Big Ten matchups, and they are going to need that moving forward. So overall, this is why you give your quarterback, a young quarterback, at that patience, because the crossfield throw to Crooms in the Nebraska matchup, his touchdown throw off his back foot to Daniel Jackson in the end zone in the Northwestern game, the third down dime out of a sack, and then the fourth down play following that. These are the flashes that are present. And as he continues to grow, as he continues to develop and the game slows down for him, you're going to have more and more and more of those prominent plays as they go. So much love to the quarterback, but it wasn't just the quarterback clicking for the Gophers on this one. Zack Evans finally got some touches. Thank you, coaches. It's about time. You're about 4 weeks late, but we got it done. Zack Evans got some run. The coaches had continuously talked about that it needed to be earned. And everybody was questioning, what does that mean? Is something bad happening? Coach Fleck said after the game, I want to stress nothing was negative. Nothing bad was happening. It's just our running back room is very talented, and you have to win the job. You have to go out and get it. Now, it's hard to win the job on the field per se when you don't get a single touch. But when he finally got his touches, he went out there, he fought, he grinded, he was shifty, he was secure with the ball, he was fighting forward for yards, and you can even see his second gear, even though he didn't have any huge breakaway runs on this one, but he was right on the verge. I'm telling you, that second gear, he was on the verge of breaking a big one. Very exciting for Zack Evans. This is what fans thought we would see from that young running back, and we were confirmed. That's what you saw. Now you talk about Darius Taylor and you talk about Zack Evans and you pair those two together, and sometimes that always doesn't work. But you look at their running styles, they're very different. Zack Evans is more shifty, east-west, quicker focus. Darius Taylor can be a north-south runner, but he is very patient. He lets it come to him and he plows through and takes the contact and fights through it. Those two running backs are very different, fire and ice, but they can pair together so well. And a lot of fans are really looking forward to that, but we won't know when that is going to happen in specific because of the Darius Taylor injury. And those injuries, the injury updates, we all know they're locked down like the government secrets. You're not going to find that out from PJ Fleck, so only time will tell. But I am excited to see what happens with those two running backs together in the same room, because right now, Sean Tyler, Bryce Williams, they don't scare defenses. But the rotating of Zack Evans and Darius Taylor, when healthy, can keep a defense true on each and every down. So that's exciting on its own. You got the quarterback stepping up. You've got some flashes in the wide receiver room. You've got your young running backs both going on to earn 4 straight Big Ten Freshman of the Weeks, 3 to Darius Taylor, and then Zack Evans got one this week. But there was negatives in this game still. It wasn't all golden rays of sunshine and ponies and all that. No, because the defense has me pulling my hair out. And I don't have very much hair in general. I'm a short-haired man. I can like to keep it low. We don't do the fro or anything like that. But they had me trying to just rip it out, because this defense, especially in the first half, I don't know what to tell you. It was there were so many holes within the defense. There were opportunities to pass all over the defense for the 3rd straight week. Now, luckily, the quarterback was missing some of those throws, but this defense is still very suspect, and it's treading water right now. Now, they made adjustments in the second half to clean some things up, but there were still plays to be given up. There were still openings that the other team couldn't always capitalize on, and that's not going to be the case next week against Michigan. It's just not. So I don't know what it has to be. I don't know what needs to happen with this secondary, with the linebackers who are playing in coverage, but we have to find a better solution to slow down opposing passing offenses, because right now it's rough. Lastly, the special teams. It has to improve. With a capital H, with a capital A, with a capital S, it has to improve. Plain and simple, because good isn't good enough. And right now, aside from Jagon Kesich, this special teams unit hasn't even been good yet. So I got respect for walk-on grinders. For the guys who grind it out, they don't have a scholarship, and they go in and they put their head down and get to work each and every day. And Quentin Redding has been that for the Gophers. But right now, there have been too many critical hiccups on that special teams units from Redding that he's a lock for the position, in my opinion. Why aren't we seeing opportunities for Christian Hoskins, who is probably the fastest player on this entire team, if not for Sean Tyler, who also could be a candidate to be a return player for you? He was an all-conference returner last season in the MAC. So why aren't these guys getting opportunities if Redding isn't answering the bell right now? And he's not. The fact that we started out on the -3 yard line because of a simple mental error. The fact that we didn't pin a team on the 1 yard line, gave them the ball to come back in that Northwestern game. Those are mental errors that cannot happen, especially basically back to back. We have to clean up the special teams. The punting has to be better. We have to down them better. We have to return better. The special teams is not special right now. And if it can't find a way to create special plays, it's going to be a rough, long season in that department for the Gophers. So it was a week full of up and downs. There was positives on offense. There was better improvement in the second half on defense. Special teams was rough. But what are the biggest questions for the Michigan week? That's what we're going to dive into next. It's a big week. And if the Gophers have any chance, then we're going to have to answer some of these questions that I have coming up next. First, I got to talk to you about our friends over at Athletic Brewing Company, because it's time for your Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. And much like Daniel Jackson, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good, and you don't have to just take my word for it. I even had a listener comment on one of the YouTube videos that we last had an ad read for them, and they said it was true. They said they gave one of their non-alcoholic beers to a friend who has been sober for many years, and that friend questioned they were like, did you just break my sobriety? That is how close it tastes to an actual beer. So you can get one for yourself and try it, but they have been winning competitions. They have been winning tastings. They beat out full strength beers in global competitions, and they're changing the game, just like Daniel Jackson, who had 2 touchdowns, including the one to ice this last week's game away. The brews are great tasting. There's over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, sours, and more. And best of all, no hangovers. And I know you can't go wrong with no hangovers. So you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use promo code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Athletic Brewing Company and athleticbrewing.com. And near beer exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, Gophers fans, we are going into Michigan week, and I'm kicking this one off early because it's a big matchup. So we're going to talk about the 5 biggest questions heading into Michigan week. And the first question, actually, we might have 6. It might be a bonus in there. The first question we have to answer, though, is can we create pressure against one of the best offensive lines in the country? Now, the Gophers in that first half against Louisiana struggled to create pressure, and the defense overall started to struggle because the secondary wasn't able to cover as long as what they would maybe hope, or there was holes opening up, and it was just not happening. But once the defensive line started to create pressures, once Anthony Smith, who I forgot to mention in the opening, absolutely balled out, led the team in pressures, and helped create Jack Henderson's interception, key plays, Anthony Smith went off in that game. Can we create that level of pressure against Michigan? You're going to need it. You're going to need to try to generate some pressure onto the quarterback in this matchup. Now, with that, how can the defense, and especially the pass defense, clean it up? Now, last week, in half number 1, we were giving more holes than Shia LaBeouf in 2003. I mean, if we expose that many holes and opportunities that we gave Louisiana in that first half to this Michigan team, it's not going to be pretty. Now, Louisiana missed a lot of them in that first half, but Michigan won't. And if we don't clean up those holes, this game will be a blowout because JJ McCarthy is not missing those shots. And if you don't believe me, this man is completing 79% of his passes right now. 79. It's one of the best in the entire country. And he is playing on a level of a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the entire nation. Plain and simple. So you have to find ways to clean it up. And that is going to be the number one question for the Gophers heading into this Michigan week. Now, another question we have is, will Michigan attack through the air more than normal because of the opportunities that the Gophers have been giving up? And if I had to make a guess, I would say they will, because we saw it with Northwestern, you saw it with Louisiana, you saw it with North Carolina. Those are 3 different, very different tiered levels of opponents, and all of them found ways to get it done through the air. So you can absolutely bet that Michigan is probably going to try and take that approach. And why not? It would give JJ McCarthy a Heisman level game, a Heisman level opportunity to try and pick apart and show I can pass for 300, 400 yards too. Put my name in the conversation. So if Minnesota is going to leave those holes open, you can bet they will probably attack that way because the Gophers have shown weaknesses in that department. But Michigan loves to run the ball. They love the time of possession. They love to play the same style of ball that PJ Fleck prefers. But the difference between Michigan and the Gophers, outside of star recruits and things like that, the difference in the styles that they like to play is that Michigan is not afraid to go and pass the ball 30, 40 times if it calls for it. If you can shut down the run game, if you can prove it, we'll go pass all over you. And then we'll get it into the run game because you're so panicked on the pass. And that is what we could take form in this matchup if the Gophers can't find a way to clean up the air game. Now, a big question on the Gophers side of things is, how will Athan respond to a tough defense? Because here's the deal. I can tell you right now, absolutely no hesitation, Michigan is going to sell out to stop the run in this first half. They absolutely are. They're going to sell it to stop the run and make Minnesota prove it through the air, because Minnesota passed it 14 times last week. The time before that, the game before that, Northwestern, they passed it 19 times. I believe the second week of the season, they passed it 15 times. You're not going to be able to get away with that. They're not going to let you. They will put an extra hat in the box. They will send an extra defender to stop the run until you prove it time and time again. Not once, not twice, not just in the first half. They're going to do it again in the second half too if you don't prove that you can pass it consistently, find the openings, and place it in the right positions. Because I bet Michigan's going to think they can force those turnovers in the air. So they'll send an extra hat and prove it. And I am excited to see how Athan can step up. This will be a big matchup. This will be a game many have eyes on. And this can be a redeeming game for Athan Calakman after not looking great in that North Carolina game. And he owns up to that. This could be an opportunity for him to shake that off, show it was a fluke, and show that he has swagger, he has confidence, and he believes in himself like this team and many loyal fans still believe in him. So I'm excited to see how he can move forward with this one. Now, Athan has been a very efficient passer in the last 2 games, and though there are some fans still out there that are like, oh, like he doesn't have enough yardage, he hasn't had 200-yard games. Look, if you actually pay attention to the plays and the passes on very minimal opportunities, Athan is distributing the ball well, and he can still force it sometimes, but this will be a big game for him to prove that he is here and he can take advantage of the opportunities that are presented his way. And the final question for Michigan week heading up this week is, will Darius Taylor be back? Now, I have been saying it since the offseason, but I believe Darius Taylor and Zack Evans could be a very special running back duo. Now, will this week be the first week we see that? That is a huge question, and I'm not very sure on it. In fact, we heard from Coach Fleck after the game in the presser that Darius Taylor didn't take a single practice last week. So that gives me a little bit of hesitation of, if he wasn't even close to getting into this last game, was that intentional, or is he pretty far off? Are we not going to see him for quite a while? I'm not exactly sure what the injury is. If it's hamstring related, if it's ankle related, we don't get that information right now. So the biggest thing is, how long is that injury going to linger? And will he be back in this huge game against his home state school? Darius Taylor's from Michigan. He got a Michigan offer, but he chose to stay here with the Gophers. I bet you more than anything, he wants to play in this Michigan game more than any single Gopher fan wants to see him. And that's saying a lot because Gophers Nation loves this kid. So the fact that I know he's going to be itching and dying and wanting to play in this game, but if he's not right and he's not ready, they're not going to put him out there. So that's a big question of, will he be there this week or will he need more rest to get healthy? Those are the biggest questions heading into Michigan week. Now we're going to wrap this show up talking about the 3 players that we absolutely need to bring their best and step up in this Michigan game if we want to have any shot of staying competitive against the number 2 team in the country. That's what we're going to talk about next. All right, Gophers fans, so let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel, because right now you can take advantage, and if you place a bet of $5 or more, you will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So that means if you go over and you use FanDuel.com/lockedon, you can take advantage of this offer for first-time new customers. You can bet on anything from spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. And if you look at this Minnesota matchup versus Michigan, they're 20-point dogs. The spread is 20.5. And you know what? It's rightfully so, because if Minnesota plays like they did in the first half of this Louisiana game, they're not going to be able to cover. But if they can put it together, if they can play their best football, this could be a tighter game. I'm not saying they're going to pull the upset, but what I'm saying is that when this Gophers team is firing on all cylinders, when we see the defense actually play elite, which we haven't seen in quite some time now, it can be up there with very competitive teams. So we'll see what they can do. We'll see what happens, but you can take advantage no matter what and get $200 guaranteed in bonus bets with a $5 bet or more over at FanDuel.com/lockedon today. All right, we're wrapping it up with 3 players that we need to step up and take a leap in this upcoming week, because without it, we're probably not going to be in the race. So the first player that I've got is Justin Walley. Now, Justin Walley is going to be tasked with a very difficult goal of slowing down Roman Wilson this week. Now, currently, Roman Wilson has 8 receiving touchdowns for the Michigan Wolverines already through 5 weeks. And you know what? He also, on top of that, has 326 receiving yards and is approaching his career high already this early in the season. Now, the Gophers, they've been rough. It's been tough. Minnesota had a better second half versus Louisiana, but they still exposed a lot of holes defensively in that game. We saw versus North Carolina, Nate McCullum had a career day, 165 yards and a touchdown, but then Bryce Kurtz the next week with Northwestern had another career day against the Gophers, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. You cannot let Roman Wilson or any of the other Michigan Wolverines have a career day, and Justin Walley bringing his swagger, bringing his heart, bringing his grit, and bringing that difference-making football is going to be key in the Gophers trying to stay in this matchup. So Justin Walley is the first player on this list that we need to bring their A game. Number 2 is my boy, Brevin Spann-Ford. Now, when it comes to run blocking, Brevin has still been huge in creating gaps and openings for these young running backs. But now we need to see some of that pass game weapon that we know is there. We need to see that tick up somehow, some way, just to use it advantageously, use his size in a one-on-one jump ball matchup. But we got to get your guy his confidence back up. Now, Brev has to secure the opportunities when they do come. Plain and simple. He does. I'm not going to make any excuses for that. He has to tune out the outside noise, and he has to not think about the move after the catch. Just be yourself and play free. Because when he does that, we've seen the ability, and we all know what he can be. We know what he is as a player and how huge he can be for this team as a passing weapon. But when fans are out there bashing a player, it isn't going to bring that best out of him. Building your guys up and bringing their swagger back is huge. We saw it with Tyler Nubin this past week. The first half was looking a little rough. He got his interception. He got his dog fired up. He got the energy going. He had some big tackles in that second half, and his juices were going again. In that second half against Louisiana, we need that same type of bounce back, that same type of confidence and energy, that revitalization from Tristyn Spann-Ford. So keep building your guy back up. Stop tearing people down. This is your team. Let's keep building them up. And don't forget, they're student athletes, folks. These are still kids. So take a second before you chirp online. But regardless, we're going to player number 3. And that is Kyler Baugh. Now, Kyler Baugh has been big for this Gophers team. He cleaned up the missed tackles that we saw in North Carolina and Northwestern. Cleaned it up a lot this last week. But that being said, this team needs internal pressure against the number 2 team in the country. And that typically starts with Kyler Baugh on this roster. Now, going against one of the best offensive lines in the country, it's going to be tough. And they also have 2 dynamic running backs. So Kyler Baugh is going to be pivotal in this game. And we need the best version of Kyler Baugh and his partner in crime, Devin Eastern, to really slow down the run game and create chaos for the Gophers on the quarterback and try and disrupt this young quarterback who is very talented. So those are the 3 players this week we absolutely need to bring their A game to be in this matchup. Now, truth is, we need our best players to be at their best to have any chance of sniffing being in this game against the number 2 team in the country, plain and simple. The Gophers have had slow starts against Nebraska, against North Carolina, against Louisiana. And then they had a hot start against Northwestern, but they fell apart in the 4th quarter. You can't have that at all. You can't have a slow start. You can't fall apart. You have to have a complete game with a quick start and their best players being at their best. They have to do all that just to be in the game this time. I think it's something they can do, but it's something that has to be done to keep it close. So we'll see what happens. We're going to dive into the Michigan matchup this week. We're going to break down the key players tomorrow for Michigan. The next day, we'll talk about the keys to victory. And then we got predictions with your boy Tristyn Spann-Ford later this week as well. Be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and we'll be sure to get those on the mailbag. Until next time, row the boat, Sky Go Gophers, and all that stuff. And don't forget to subscribe.